Any questions, any doubts to both of the panelists? Could I request Mehul Bhai to join us on stage as well, please? Vedant, could we have one more mic? So I've requested you often enough, I think, and I'm going to beg you one more time. Questions, please keep them flowing. I will address them to both of our speakers. And while I wait, Mehul Bhai, with your permission, if I could ask you one question.
Sure.
While Swamiji in his presentation was making a mention about what inspires or what should inspire, you made a comment about how you try to keep things predictable. So I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more on that.
See, most of us leaders, every day morning when we start our work, we have a list of tasks. There are 3-4 types of tasks. One is something called routine, whatever your email and checking. One thing where it's like a pending troubleshooting, then some new troubleshooting, and some strategic thing. So normally leaders have routine, troubleshooting, and strategy. These are the 3 things. So whatever may be your style of reminders and working, so when you plan your day, except troubleshooting, rest all whatever you think what person is supposed to do with this. If at the end of the day, if it happens, then that means you are able to predict well and you are able to execute well. So that gives immense pleasure that you are able to accomplish all the tasks.
Okay. Do you make a conscious effort to plan your day in a certain way? Is daily exercise of some kind, which Swamiji spoke about 20-20-20, but like yourself, what kind of routine do you follow?
I follow normally 4 days in a week. I do 1 hour intense exercise with some running and jogging and other things, cardio also, and weights. And I'm very disciplined. I think that's the starting point of my morning. And I think people also knows that when I am not well, then only I will not be disciplined, something like that.
Okay.
So that is my routine, and I plan my day very well. I'm an old school of thought kind of person that in my diary I write down simple tasks and put tick mark. Even at times for building confidence, you write a very small, minuscule task also. But after say half day, if you have 5-6 ticks, then it gives you more energy.
Okay. You mentioned using the services of a mentor or a coach. What is the kind of interaction that happens?
I'm very blessed that I have a wonderful mentor since last 7 years. And before he retired, he was actually my customer, one of the biggest customer, Galderma. And I always admired him for his humility and people's person. So the person who has not worked even a day in any manufacturing or R&D from a sales and marketing background is mentoring to me, and it has given me a tremendous, one important learning what I had from him is when to take a pause.
Okay.
Like I'm quite impatient as a person. I used to be considerably changed than before. So he has made me, you can say, gave me some tips by which I'm able to become more calmer and cooler, and sometimes you have a very difficult conversation. So even till today, when I have some very difficult conversation, I little bit practice with him for 5 minutes before I go for that meeting.
Okay. No, definitely things to be emulated. So Swamiji, there's a question for you from Amit. How do you inspire a team?
So the team has to be inspired by mainly the vision and the emotional connect to that vision. Whatever the vision of the company is or the vision of that team you want the team to achieve, that must be inspiring to them, it must be adequately challenging to them, and they must see their personal growth in that by doing this I will also grow in all ways, monetarily, in terms of talent, in terms of social skills, in different ways. How I grow as a person, when they see that, when they see what difference it is making to the people, that emotional connect will come. And when they see that it is manifesting my potential, again that inspiration will come. So using all that, one can inspire the team. And one important thing that the person must know is that the leader is genuinely concerned about my growth. That.
Mehul bhai, how does one become an effective communicator?
I think, according to me, effective communication, it is beyond a point you can't doctor communication. So what you are, if it comes out in a right way, then only you can become an effective communication. And simple 2 words, if you are communicating dil se, like there is one book also, somebody in US, he has advocated quite well, and even to the USFD inspectors, they said that whoever works dil se, they only can communicate well. And apart from your skill set and thought process, but communication, the opposite person, when he feels that you are communicating truly dil se, I think the effectiveness is much better.
So there is definitely space for more authenticity and less jargon and less posturing. So,
Absolutely.
there's a question here. Priya, am I right? Is that your name? Okay. Please write your names so that it's easier. Swamiji, for you, I'm just going to read the question out. We are what we are only because of our own upbringing, or is there some connection to what we become to our past lives?
So it is both, but mainly it is the connection which is my own karma, which I carry forward from the past. So the reason why I am born in a particular circumstance, to particular people, why I am able to connect to some people, not connect to some people, all that depends on the karma of the past. Plus in today's situation, how much have I acquired from this life, what have I learned, what kind of upbringing it has been. But the response to that upbringing, like 2 children born in the same family, having the same inputs, may not respond in the same way. So why is that happening? Because there is a past connection. There is a certain continuity which I am carrying forward. But in the present I have also Purusharth, which is free will, which I can choose, and which is why in spite of whatever may be my circumstances, I can still achieve what I really want to achieve, knowing well what is my past. If I am becoming aware that this is how I have a tendency to think like this or be like this, once I become aware, self-awareness plays the big role there. Then in the present I can wield around and change that. Yeah. So mainly I am influenced by my past, but I have freedom in the present to change the course of my action. Past cannot condition me, nor can the circumstances condition me. So my Purusharth or my self-effort is greater than my past influence and my present circumstances. That's what Vedanta teaches us.
Again from Priya, another interesting question. You spoke about expectation versus acceptance. So expectation from team members, family, friends, definitely we have these expectations. But why is it that we just cannot accept whatever they deliver, or, the last, up to your expectations,
Yeah.
how does one?
Correct. Correct. So acceptance does not mean that whatever is delivered now, I am satisfied with that. It may not be up to the mark, so I am not happy. Acceptance there means that right now this is what has come. Instead of psychologically brooding over it or regretting or accusing, I need to accept, okay, right now if I expected 100, I have got only 60. If I learn to accept that, why did that 40 not come, my focus will go on that, and I will start identifying if I need to empower that person or help the person out, improve the performance, all that I can do. But generally our mind doesn't go into those objective aspects. It gets very easily conditioned by the lack of result which I expected. It gets affected because I have a certain attachment to that result. This has to be like this only. So that insistence on the result is what makes me not accept that. Now, when I don't accept, there's a psychological reaction inside. So instead of finding out objectively how to deal with it, what to do next, how do I actually get that result, a lot of energy goes away in psychological blaming, accusing, branding, all that, which is what acceptance will remove. And my non-accepting is because of my attachment. So I need to get flexible in my thinking. And second point is not take it personally. That taking it personally is what makes us react. If somebody has not delivered, even if that person has a personal reason, if I don't take it personally, I will still remain objective. Suppose we say that this team member doesn't like me, so whatever I have told this team member is just not delivering because he doesn't like me and he doesn't want to meet my targets. That team member may have intended it personally towards me, but if I don't take it personally, I will be more objective about it. Even if I need to fire that person, I will do it most objective way without reacting. So my focus will still remain on the goal and not shift to that person. So I will be able to find out alternatives of how to do this, how to deal with that person sternly or in a balanced way or any other way. So that's how it will be. So flexibility and openness in the mind makes us do that.
So in a similar vein, but to Mehul bhai, how do we separate our subjectivity to make objective decisions in our corporate world?
And if I may just elaborate it a little bit, the question was more on the trust formula that you explained, right? So you had one element which is liking. So liking is, I relate to liking from a bias standpoint. And there is a lot of talk in the corporate world today about how do you deal with unconscious biases, because that's what is most harmful from a corporate organization perspective. So I just want to understand how do you sort of move away from the liking, which is more of a subjective or a bias-driven kind of emotion, versus objectively looking at the situation and then taking action against on what result you want.
Very interesting question. Now, liking, as you rightly said, it's very subjective thing. Now, when you are dealing with a person within your team or any supplier or anyone, you know him since quite long. So, liking biasness can be easily removed based on the past and what he or she has done. To some extent, whatever you say, 10-20% biasness will always remain. It's very difficult to remove complete biasness. But it can be very objectively done. And as Swamiji said, if we become a little more objective, I have seen in a most difficult situation or confronting situation, we can avoid personal attack by putting down on paper the facts. Normally I'm a data-driven person. For example, we had a recent issue, like in the month of June, we had USFD inspection, and the overall output or a turnover for the month was almost 37 or 38% less. So normally people will give only obvious reason that we have a USFD inspection, everything slowed down, key people were busy and things like that. So in that case, the biasness creeps in. Now, for doing the objective analysis, the only way you can do objective analysis by asking a right data. I feel most of the confrontation can be easily removed if you have a right data. Right now what is happening is we all are working with too much data, and the right data doesn't come on your table, and then you lose your cool, etc. So when, just to take a leaf out of that, we can't rewind. Like the previous question was that when you don't meet, or when your team doesn't meet your expectation, normal psychological phenomenon is you become angry. Now, a simple definition as per religion, anger is when we don't accept the fact, it leads to anger. Now, at that point of a time, even everyone, including me, we lose cool. because say quarter ending is done and board presentation and things like that. So the prescription to non-performance and to influence your team members, the only way is present the data in a palatable way and really make him or her think for a solution. Most of the time, our energy goes in problem finding. The confrontation happens because according to that person, he or she is not responsible, and our energy goes in proving that you are wrong. That fellow will say, I am not wrong. So there is a defense mechanism goes on. You lose your energy and the door shuts. That means the opposite person, whatever you say, there is no acceptance. So then you become only directive. Now we want everyone little bit curious, thoughtful, etc. Though it is very difficult to practice in crunch time. In good time you can practice. But really the need of the hour is when the things are not going good. So at that point of a time, I have seen right data in a right way with communication. That means there is a formal and informal talk together. Many times we see nasty mail floating around. That is disaster. It's like a gear without lubrication. That means when you send email, it has no emotions. So then you end up communicating in a very bad way. So I have seen little bit, suppose if you want to give a very negative feedback backed up with the data and right communication in person, etc. I think that gives super results. I guess I've answered.
Thank you. One of the things also in Mehul Bhai's presentation was accountability. Swamiji, is it true that we are becoming less and less accountable? And if we are, what can we do to make ourselves more accountable in any environment that we are?
Right.
Actually, yeah, both of you would be interesting. No, go ahead.
Okay. I will again go back to my initial part of the presentation of VUCA world, where lot of turmoil is happening because of now digitization. People are not able to understand the impact of it. And what is happening is that the competition is moving at much faster pace than you. So what we call is accountability is basically the complexity of the business. That complexity of the business people are not able to handle. Whether it is in pharma, whether it is in automobile, or whether it is in IT, or whether it is in building line, etc. Complexity of business in current time, earlier bit of unaccountability was okay because profitability percentages were higher, etc. Now everything, the margins are going down day by day, etc. Everything is becoming more of commodity. If you go to still lifestyle or something, before 10 years also, the average shirt you will get $499, $599. Now also it is the same. So this accountability, it is not happening because of complexity. So the only way we have to, as I think we mentioned, that it should be, our life should be embedded with technology to handle the complexity and in turn make people accountable. Now making people accountable, every task at the end, if you make it simple, that means, as I told during my presentation, that we should not need too much intelligence to handle every task. We are too much dependent on leader. Now that dependency, if you want to go down, then again complexity of the business, everything is interlinked. Your quality of business, your strategy, your, you can say the quality indicators, etc. So the accountability part, again, I have seen accountability comes with right data and data analysis. So most of the complexity, I will give you one recent example. We have 18 lines, 11 manufacturing lines, 18 packaging lines. And we have 28 customers, we have 300 different formulas, and everyone feels that it's very complex. So the supply chain planner who is based in Mumbai, normally he works on Excel sheet. We had some program, it didn't work because again the human intervention, etc. So when you work with so much of data, with say 50 line items and 70 here, around 30,000 data, the entire IT systems becomes very slow. Now it is very complex. You don't get the result. You get wrong output because he gives a wrong demand to the plant, and there are a number of issues. Now I will tell you what technology can do. Normally what Excel sheet can do the calculation in the background for such complex 30,000 different type of data, it will take few minutes and nobody has having time and patience. So if you must have seen when you have a very heavy Excel file, you click once and once you close and again you remember something, again you open, it takes a lot of time. So then people lose that effectiveness. So his friend, he met his friend in the Juhu Joggers Park, and he said that he is into a data analytics firm and he does this data management and analysis for a lot of retails, Big Bazaar, Shopper Stop and all. So he says 30,000 is relative, it's nothing. Every day he is supposed to analyze 1.5 crore such data analytics, such fields. There is a open source code program available, R, etc. He learned that program himself. You can write your program. He did that and converted this Excel data which can marry with this program. What takes minutes, this program took only 3 seconds. So imagine, in today's world, this complexity, if you don't marry technology,
yes.
and right data analysis, you cannot bring accountability.
Thank you. Swamiji, your take on it?
Yeah, so from spiritual standpoint, we say that accountability comes with the right attitude that I am here to serve. The humility has to be there, that I am here to serve and I am accountable. I am not non-questionable. I am here in the service, whether of the company or of the people I am serving. So I need to be accountable, one. So ego is that which makes me not accountable. And who are you to question me? Sometimes that kind of attitude comes. So then I don't perform in a way in which I am accountable. Second point comes is when I should know that what gets measured, that alone can grow. Accountability is something which is very important for my growth. Mehul Bhai spoke about the chart, he made the 5, let us say 5 points and those columns, and I must tick. That is one of the very effective ways whereby one understands one's own growth. So even if you do that for simple things like an exercise, every day morning when you go to exercise, if you tick, when you see number of X, it will pinch. So I have to connect my accountability to my own growth. If I say that by being accountable I am growing, then that culture will also come into me to be accountable. Third aspect is that chalta hai type of an attitude. The superiors also, the system also, if it is such, where accountability, cross checks and balances are not there, then it's very difficult. One will not be accountable there. Because one will find ways and means to get out, the system is very dhila. So what he said earlier, the system, the data, the analysis, that everything has to be fixed properly. If that is not there, human mind wants escape in any case. Minimum effort, maximum result is what human mind is conditioned by. So the person doesn't want to be accountable. Humility, putting the systems in place, not having chalta hai type of an attitude, and measuring whatever I am doing. Every single thing has to be accountable, measured, checks and balances are there, then it will happen. Even in spiritual life, one has to do that. Consistency, 42 years, Swami Chinmayananji got up every morning and he wrote letters for 1 to 1.5 hours. No compromise at all. And people have had, every single day he used to write minimum 100 to 125 letters. Just think about that. How is it? Because he has inner inspiration, nobody is accountable, nobody is asking him. But you see his method. Suppose he, some letters if you see, he would have written, because he used to travel very often to many different places. So every place he may be 3 days, 5 days maximum. So sometimes the letter, when it comes by post, it will come to him. Suppose it is sent to Chennai, but he has left Chennai and he has gone to Hyderabad. So from Chennai they will reroute it, again it will go to Hyderabad. So in the reply, he will write to that person, received your letter sent to Chennai, from there it is rerouted to me at Hyderabad, I have got it today, hence the delay in replying. Otherwise, his standard thing is when the letter comes, in maximum 2 days he will reply, in maximum 3 to 4 days it will reach that person. Indian Post Service at that time was also that efficient. So any person who writes a letter to him will get that letter reply in maximum 5 to 6 days. Now he doesn't have to be accountable to that person, but that is his commitment. Why? Because the attitude is, I am here to serve. And that person needs to know that if you have written to me, why did you get this late? So that attitude of humility brings this whole thing.
Okay, moving on to the last question for this afternoon. Mehul Bhai, for you, in the interest of time, a brief answer if you will. If there is somebody who is likable and delivery oriented, vis-a-vis there's somebody who's not likable and delivery oriented, versus somebody who's likable but less effective in delivering his work and less output, which of the two would you prefer? Praveen, is that the question? Have I got it right? Yeah? Okay.
Can you just repeat a little?
Sure. If you had two individuals, one not so likable but who was delivery oriented, vis-a-vis somebody who was very likable but his output was less than perfect, less than what was expected, which of the two would you hire?
Definitely first one. It's not just because of delivery, because every team you have different kinds of people, and to get likable people, there are always in the existing some likable people, but the team performance increases with change agent. So if somebody is doing well, we can utilize to our advantage and then bring and somehow convert that person by which his humility increases. I've seen some of the people who are not expressive. I think that little bit of opening out, if we work on it, because if there is others, if attitude part is there or is, then it's a different subject. But you mentioned likable, so that's why we'll choose the first one.
Okay.
And just one thing I wanted to tell you that most of the medium scale company we all have grown, we work in a kind of a funnel way. Like this. There is a big funnel and little. So you do too much and very little juice comes out of it. So we feel there is a burning out effect. I always tell that we should work like an Amazon way, reverse funnel way. You do little and it should have a disproportionate advantage.
Sage words. Thank you, Mehul Bhai. Thank you, Swamiji. We'll conclude our Q&A.